I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Have a roll call?
Mayor Hassler.
Here.
Alderman Smith. Alderwoman Johnson. Here. Alderman Donovan.
Here.
Alderman Jokers.
Here.
Alderman Inman.
Here.
Alderman Rainey.
Here.
Alderman Prince.
Here.
Alderwoman Armbruster. Here. Mayor, we have a quorum.
Very good. Move for approval of the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Takes us on down to personal appearances. We have 3 tonight. Victoria Daly.
Hold on just a second, I'm having problems getting connected.
Should we skip her?
Skip her.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we can bring her back.
Yeah, you can bring.
She's waving at us.
Well, that's right, except I'm having problems getting this.
Oh, happy.
We can see her face.
Yeah, that way you said.
You want me to move on? There we go.
There's an X on the
There's an X on the right
Middle
and
screen.
mid-screen.
mid-screen to the right.
I think that's us.
There.
No.
There she is. Hello.
Hi, Victoria.
Victoria.
Hi, how's everyone doing tonight?
All right, you?
Good.
Thank you for having me.
Keep
Can
going.
everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I have a couple different reports to go over tonight. The first is the financial statements and independent auditors report. So if you have it in front of you, you can follow along, or else you can just kind of listen to my summary. So I am looking at the big report after the table of contents, which is on our letterhead. It's on Signage's letterhead, and it says independent auditors report. And so this is our report on the financial statements, where we discuss management's responsibility for the financial statements. Our responsibility as auditors to audit those statements, and then our opinion on page 2, our opinion, which it states, in our opinion, the financial statements is a fair opinion, present fairly the modified cash basis financial position of the governmental activities, the business type, each major fund, and the aggregate remaining fund information of the city as of September 30th, 2021. So that means there were no misstatements identified. So that's good, that's what the city wants.
Okay.
On page 4 starts the management's discussion and analysis. And this kind of gives a brief overview over what occurred during the year in the city's, the financial activities of the city. So there's a couple different bases of the city. So there's the government-wide financial statements and the fund financial statements. So the government-wide has things like capital assets and the city's pension plan and the city's debt. The fund financial statements is what you're probably more familiar with, and that's what the city budgets, like the general fund, the debt service fund, capital projects, those funds. The government-wide blends all those together. So on page 6, it'll show the balance sheet in the government-wide basis. So you have a column for governmental activities, which includes the general fund, capital projects, and all those funds. And then the business type activities, which is just the water and sewer fund. So as of the end of the year, assets for governmental activities was $12.6 million. Liabilities were $1.4 million, leaving ending net position of $11.2 million. And the total unrestricted that's able to be spent is $3.5. In the business type activities column, you have total assets of $12 million, total liabilities of almost $3 million, and ending net position of $9 million. If you turn to page 7, you'll see on the government-wide basis the income statement, the revenues and expenses. So governmental activities has a slight increase in that position of about 678,000, and the business type activities stayed pretty consistent, only changed a decrease of 27,000. And moving on to page 8, this kind of goes over the governmental funds. So the governmental funds includes like the general fund. So the general fund decreased by 135,000 due to a transfer to the capital projects fund. And then another one of the funds, the transportation trust fund, increased about 360,000 due to a decrease in capital outlay from the prior year. And then the last major fund is the capital projects fund, and that increased by 769,000, mainly due from a transfer in from the general fund. And then the proprietary funds are the water fund and the sewer fund. And the water fund's net position decreased slightly by about 48,000 due to an increase in operating expenses. And then the sewer fund increased slightly by about 21,000. If we move on to page 9, this will show the city's capital assets. Things like land, buildings, equipment and vehicles, streets. So as of the end of the year, the total between the governmental activities and business type of capital assets was about 17 million, stayed pretty consistent from the prior year. And the city's long-term debt, the city didn't issue any new debt this year, so it decreased due to just the usual principal payments on the debt. So it decreased from 4.2 million to 3.8 million. Now moving on to page 11, this will show you it's called the statement of net position. You might also kind of refer to the balance sheet for the government-wide basis. So total assets of about 24 million total between the two, and total net position of about 20 million, leaving unrestricted net position of about 4.8 to be spent. Page 12 is called the Statement of Activities for the government-wide basis, and this presents the revenues and expenses for the city. And so the total change was about 651,000 of an increase. So it went from about 19.7 million to 20.3 million between all the city's funds. Page 13 shows the balance sheet for the governmental funds. And so this is like the general fund, the transportation fund, the capital projects fund, and then all the city's smaller funds, like the band fund, the debt service fund, those are combined into the other governmental funds column. So it shows total fund balances of about 5.5 million, total assets of about 6 million. An unassigned amount, which means those are the funds the city has to spend, of about 1.3 million. Moving on to page 15, this is called the Statement of Revenues, Expenditures, and Changes in Fund Balances. And this is kind of like the income statement of the city's funds. All the other cities' smaller funds are combined in that other governmental funds. And so in total, the net change in fund balances was about 693,000. So the city started at 4.8 million. Then moving on to page 17, this shows the statement of net position for the water and sewer funds. And then page 18 shows the statement of revenues, expenses, kind of like the income statement for the water and sewer fund. And so like I had mentioned earlier, the water fund decreased slightly and the sewer fund increased slightly, but overall it was a very small percent change, so it relatively maintained consistent from the prior year. Moving on to page 20, this starts the notes to the financial statements. So there are various notes included in here. The first is the summary of significant accounting policies. So this kind of just goes over the accounting policies that the city uses for the financial statements. Note B on page 26 goes over the city's cash. And then part of this is that these cash was insured as of the end of the year, so it was entirely secured or collateralized. It shows total investments of about 1.3 in CDs, and then the water and sewer fund has 21,000 in money markets and 608,000 in certificates of deposit, and that's on page 27. Moving on to page 20, this shows the schedule of activity in the city's capital assets. So it goes over the increases and decreases for the city's land, buildings, equipment and vehicles, streets, and it breaks it out. So the business type is the water and sewer, and all the other is in governmental activities. So governmental activities, it stayed pretty consistent, went from 6.8 to 6.6 million, and then business type, the water and sewer, went from 10.5 to 10.7. The long-term debt. Which we kind of discussed earlier, interest payments, a new capital lease that you can see, but no bonds or certificates of participation or
We are locked up.
Okay.
Must be downloading some sort of software update at the same time we're trying to do this.
Oh.
Does anybody have any particular questions about the audit? Something that's, that you've seen, or if you looked at it, had any, because I can email the questions to her and get those back.
We talking about the end of it?
Yeah, our screen's frozen, her screen is frozen, so moving on.
Let's move on.
Yeah.
If you got any questions, just, get with Happy and we'll get them taken care of, okay?
We had good luck having it done, right? The
Yeah.
staff here, no problems with these people? Nope.
No, we didn't all, they did not come down this year because that's about the height of COVID, so it was all done remotely. We upload it to a site that they have secured, and then they do all the work. They'll send a message down to Sue Schweiss, and she'll send whatever else she needs to, whatever other information they need. Worked out pretty well.
Good.
Because we get everything in chunks, and then we can find the material, scan it, send it to them.
Great.
Super. All right, well, moving on, we'll have Jimmy Dunzy up here to give us a report for the municipal band, our president.
First of all, I want to apologize for my late start with the band. My work schedule didn't allow me till now to do so, and I appreciate you guys passing the ordinance for hiring the band for the summer. The only really thing I have to say is we are going to increase the grant program another $3,500 to make it an even 10 grand for this year. And that's basically about it. I've talked to the board members. We're on schedule of getting the band going sometime towards the end of May after school lets up.
Sue? Any questions?
Who are your board members? I'm just curious.
Nancy Fisher is our secretary. Jim Baker is our treasurer. Roger Martin is vice president.
Okay.
Super. All righty. Thank you, Jimmy.
Good group. Thanks, Jim.
Ron Inman, you're up. Ron here's with the New Bourbon Port Authority.
I'll just take a few minutes. We're trying to get funding from Illinois, and we've finally got a new Senator, Terry Bryant. She's on the Republican Party, which is kind of unusual in that area over there, but she came over and visited.
Hey, Ron, could you give everybody like what the issue with the ferry, what's going on with your funding?
The issue with the ferry is that we need money from Illinois has never participated.
Yeah.
Missouri gives us $88,000 a year, and that can be used for reimbursements for labor or any expenses, fuel or anything like that. Illinois has never given anything, and we kind of stumbled in back about a year ago that they had always told us that we were private, so they run their own ferries, they wouldn't participate with us. But that's not true. They've lied to us for several years. They have been supporting the Cave and Rock Ferry, which is privately held by the same family since 1798 or 99. It came out in the paper of Metropolis, and I had a boat pilot that knew we were struggling and give me that information, and we followed up on it, and in fact, they threatened to shut the ferry down this past year if they didn't get $1 million over 8 years. So they're currently getting $144,000 from Illinois and $144,000 from Kentucky for the next 8 years to support that ferry, which lets it pretty well run for free. They have a spare. So we're asking, I've asked for the House bills. Senator Terry Bryant, who's the new senator over there, asked me to feed information to all the news media and get it out to Paducah and Cape Girardeau and every place else. And the only thing we're waiting on to do that is that I need the House bill numbers, so I'm talking about the right thing. So anyway, we're asking you, there's a letter that's the county just agreed today to sign and send to Governor Pritzker, straight to him. And we've got his address through registered mail. And if you guys want to see the ferry keep operating, I can tell you that we'll be out of the SARS money. It's the only reason we're running now by the end of this year, and we'll either shut it down or only run it 2 or 3 days a week. So I think it's important to tourism. It's up to you all what you think, but we'd really appreciate if you would support it. It's your all's decision, of course, to do it or not do it. If you do, I ask the mayor there to send a copy of the letter to Terry Bryant as well as the governor. And to get to the governor and make sure it gets there, it has to be certified. So it costs you $12, $14 or so, something like that. I'm going to bring up something else real quick. About 2 months ago, I brought it up to one of our port meetings in Perryville that we stopped billing you guys, and your last bill that you got for keeping up the ferry from 1983 or 4 through 2013 was $2,500 from each city, because the ferry and the Port Authority is owned by St. John City and County and Perryville City and County. That's who owns that ferry. That's who owns the Port Authority and everything. 126 acres and $8 or $9 million been spent down there. And I'll go into that if you got a few minutes in just a second about that. But you guys have saved $22,500 over the last 9 years, because I know your budget's already in for this year. I just got a call from Perry County Wednesday night, and one of our board members had a meeting with them, and they're going to start paying. the county and the city again, too. The only reason we quit, we were getting money from Billman, from Sam Billman, whenever we at least the right to run it, which is the stevedore is what they call it. Now our stevedore is SIT with Kurt Johnson and those guys. But the reason the port was built in the first place and all the funding was for the frac sand. Oil prices went to so-so in a handbasket back a few years ago. Now they're not. But when oil was under $100, they couldn't afford the frac sand in Texas and Louisiana and different places where there's fracking. And then in the meantime, they also hit a better seam down at Round Jackson, and they're still loading 2 barges a day and have been for all through the low oil prices. That's pretty well going up the Ohio River to Pennsylvania to some of those wells for fracking. But anyway, in the last 9 years, we've given up $145,000 from the counties and the cities. The counties pay $5,000, the cities pay $2,500. So we're asking you to consider start paying it again, because Perry County tells me they're going to, the city and the county. But that's up to you guys. I give the mayor and your city administrator a copy. There's been a fair here since 1798. We had a gentleman got in the Missouri archives. I give him a copy of that. It's all in French, and we had a French school teacher here deciphered it out, so it's all over there. We think there's been a ferry here. And also, I kind of jump around on you. You guys own the old town site. The old town site of St. Genevieve is in the 126 acres that the Port Authority owns. And that's where the farm ground is, the 13 or 14 acres. That is the old town site. Without an archaeological study, which is $100,000 plus, to say yes or no, we can't do anything but farm it. We could do stuff on top of it. We can't dig any footings or anything like that in the ground without an archaeological study. But that is the old town site. If you go down Bourbon Road and right to your right, that's the old town site when the road makes the bend. So you guys own all that. And we've got so many phone calls. I really don't want to put it out with the press here because we've asked to be confidential, but I've had more phone calls in the last 2 or 3 weeks, almost daily. We've got a lot of stuff finally maybe going to happen down here. We know there's kind of a new sand plant that's going in out west of here, and they're wanting to start loading in October. We've got 2 or 3 other places that all of a sudden want to start. You've got a barge company that's going to start running the Missouri River, and they're already eating up property in Cape Girardeau, and they pretty well got this property booked out here from SIT, and they want to take on groceries and rigging and stuff. They want to put an office trailer and stuff down there, so, and potentially some other things down there. So all the electricity is buried right to the dock, and the dock was built sturdy enough to handle a conveyor on one side and a walkway on the other. So I'm meeting with Representative Wright next week. Unfortunately, his brother passed away, and we were supposed to meet last week, but the governor's got some money for ports. The only thing we're needing right now is dredge money, and the Port Authority Association has never got money for dredging. We've got money for everything else, but I know Jefferson City, their new port's trying to get some money, so we're working on that. But we've got other alternatives. We're also right now got a study going on with Burns and McDonnell, which is one of the big engineering firms in St. Louis. That study will be finished at the end of this month, and that's to let maybe live water through there to stop that siltation. We haven't had no business, so that's why siltations happen. Same thing happened with the marina down here. But I'll mention that real quick. The Port Authority has the rights to market the marina, even if we want to buy it ourselves, which won't go into that right now. But they've reduced the price from $4.5 million to $1.75 million for that 18 to 22 acres. And the information will go out in the Waterway Journal through our Port Authority. We've got the rights to it. We can help people get bonding and things if somebody is interested in it. So just so you know, there's a lot of things just going on pretty quick. Now I'm going to jump in on something else. The Lions Club is going to have their Lions Club breakfast on April the 24th, on Sunday morning. And we would like to be able to block off one lane of traffic from 1st Street to Main from 6 o'clock till around noon, 1 o'clock. So we'd like permission from that, so I'll let you guys talk about that. So I just need to know if that's okay sometime in the next few days. April the 24th. Market Street from 1st Street. Yeah, I didn't say Market, from 1st Street to Main.
We'll get you, Ron, we'll have to have you fill out an
We've
application.
done that last year, but I think they just kind of done it on their own without asking permission. I kind of think so.
Yeah, well, we'll get an application.
Yeah.
Aren't you a Lions member?
Yeah, but I don't go to the meetings. They don't let me in the door.
He missed the last meeting. We just had
He'll
this
be
meeting
there at the
Tuesday
next one.
night and just come up, and since they found out I was coming here, they asked me to
What about you? You
talk
need to
about
be
it.
involved.
Anybody got any questions about the port, I'd be happy to answer them.
Yeah. Ron, talking about this ferry operation, it seems like it's kind of been funded one side by the state of Missouri.
It has.
St. John County, St.
Yeah.
John City, Perry County.
Yeah.
I know you're talking about going to the state of Illinois and stuff, but have you went to any of the additional counties on the Illinois side?
We haven't really, but that's something that probably can happen, is going to happen, because we're getting back into trying to go over and meet with them. Sandra Cabot and I went and met with their port authority, who has the property on the other side, actually where the ferry landing is, and they're for this, and that I left a copy of everybody that's getting the copies of this. The village of Prairie du Rocher. Prairie du Rocher is hoping, with the old territorial governor's house across from Caskie Island, and with their village and with their 2 forts, they're hoping to be like us, maybe. Maybe if the federal government let them to have a federal park over there. So we think it's important, but we've got a lot of people. There's 10 entities over there that's on that form that I given. You can pass it around to them, and they're all senators and representatives and village presidents and stuff that are sending this same letter to support us. But yeah, we're going to ask that same thing.
The reason I was asking that and stuff, as far as the traffic flow back and forth.
It's about 50-50.
Right.
And we have a count on that. We keep a count on that for the city and heavy equipment, and with the Chester Bridge and the situation it's in, it's unbelievable, the farm equipment that crosses that thing. We've got people that bring their tractors and combines and their trucks that goes over to Caskie Island because of the bridge. They have to have permission to block it, and they're going to, I think, close one lane on it here pretty quick to work on it, and then it won't be wide enough to get so much stuff across. There's, if anybody wants it, I've got a copy of the states. Both states have that, the amount of equipment, and monthly we give them a count of every car, every pickup, every truck, every piece of farm equipment. 4x4s, that all goes each month to the state of Missouri. You guys are welcome to a copy of it if you want it. I'd like to see your new person that's over your tourism come and see us. He's never come and visited.
Oh, boy, he's in the back there. Well, he's called out.
The ferry or me about the ferry, so we would like his input on it. So, and I know he's busy trying to get other things going. So, anyway, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ron.
Okay, takes us to our city administrator's report.
You have an updated report at your seat. A couple of things. Stormwater Committee met today. We've narrowed it down to one company that we want to talk to, one engineering group. So we'll hope to do that probably beginning of April, and then bring an agreement to the board. Or if we don't come to an agreement with that group, we'll go to the next group. So we'll have something here soon. 3 submittals have been submitted for the website improvements for the tourism website. So Jeff and I are going to sit down and look at that, and again discuss with the company that we feel best represents what we want to do with the website, and then talk to them, see how that works. St. Genevieve Flying Club has requested an easement from the levee district. They want to utilize additional space by expanding the width of the runway and expanding the length of it, so that a little bit bigger planes can land up there. Levee district is all for it at this point. So Mark and I have been in discussions on how to make this work. Since we kind of manage the land, but it's not in our name, kind of the same way we do with the crops that we have with the farmers up there. So we're working through that process. The rest of it, do you have any questions? Can I answer those? Okay, sounds good, thank you.
Thank you. Takes us to staff reports. Jeff, you're up first.
Good evening, and February was a eventful/uneventful month due to a lot of things, but one of the highlights of that was us digging in and finding some wonderful stories to highlight and incorporate into Black History Month, and highlighting that on social media. And if you're not familiar with the Williams Brooks story, you should be, and there is plenty of information about them that we highlighted on our social media pages, and some of the successes and impacts that they've had on other people and across the country, quite honestly. We also, during Black History Month, announced the upcoming exhibit at the Museum Learning Center to talk about Moses Riney, who is also a St. John resident here in the county. And then, of course, the severe weather reared its ugly head a few times and postponed the couple of events. The annual chocolate walk was postponed by 1 week, but still was very good participation, despite the fact that there was still some snow and ice and still some folks that could not make the event. The other Missouri Tourism Roadshow that we were expecting several folks from across the state to join us here. That event is still at least on the calendar, and that rescheduled date is to be determined. We were featured in 417 magazine. A magazine just recently did a quick article on great weekend getaway destinations, and it was all about St. Genevieve, so if you get an opportunity to look that up. The visitors at the Welcome Center, the traffic was down a little bit overall, but doing a little further investigation in the comparisons there, I found out that over 52% of the people last year in February came on one day. And that obviously was recollection from the Welcome Center staff. Obviously, midst of the pandemic, and also the weather had broken, and so there was a very large contingency that turned out for the chocolate walk on that day, which accounted for over half of the people throughout the entire month. So in comparison, we did pretty well with 503 for the total of February. On the other page there, social media settled a little bit from where we were. We've had such good gains in so many different categories, but we're still moving forward, just not quite to the extent of where we had been in the past couple of months. We did launch a new social media campaign this week to specifically focus on potential tourists from the DMAs of St. Louis and Cape Girardeau. And part of that is an effort to bring in light of the gas price hike that's going on, to focus on the folks who are within an hour to an hour and a half, as opposed to Memphis and Evansville and some other areas. And so we'll highlight the fuel-friendly trips from those areas. Some of the upcoming events, you have a list there. Shop Hop on Saturday, March 26th. Make sure you get out for that. The marketing workshop, that's our second one for the tourism department. That's scheduled for Wednesday morning, March 30th at 8 a.m., and that will be held here at City Hall. By the way, you're all welcome to attend that if you'd like to participate.
Jeff, how long do you expect that? I mean, that's going to be a little longer than your coffee and conversation.
Well, it's titled the Coffee and Conversation, and just to soften that a little bit for the public so that it's not so rigid and formal. So you're certainly able to bring in some coffee and ask a lot of questions. So we highly encourage that.
Are you thinking an hour, 2 hours?
So it's probably, we're going to try to hold it. The first one, there was a lot to cover. So in this one, we probably will be somewhere around an hour to an hour and a half.
Okay, thanks.
And then, of course, the STG Gravel Classic, that is doing much better than we had anticipated. I think that I stated that our initial number that we had hoped to get participation on, we felt like it would be a success if we had 100 participants. The last communication that I had with the folks at TravelNet gave us 170 persons that have already registered, and they anticipate that we're just now picking up as we move closer to the event, that a lot of people will find some room in their schedule, obviously weather related, those kind of things that will impact that, and we can possibly be at 300 participants in this. And that's participants only, not including the 1.5 persons that they average in bringing with them. So we would be at about 1,000 people for that Saturday. And the start time is 8 o'clock. The sign up will start at around 6:30 that morning. And of course that will impact Market Street, Main Street temporarily with an escort, as the group has a rolling start with an escort down to Division and onto the levee.
Thank you very much. David?
Good evening. On my report there, you can see we didn't have a Heritage Commission meeting in February. We do have one scheduled later this month, and there are 2 applicants already, so we'll definitely have that meeting. Under the building department, I just wanted to give you an update. Due to some weather conditions and other items, the demolitions that we've been discussing haven't happened, but the one on 8th should happen next week. It's up to the contractor. He moved on to another job. And then 250 South Gabourey spoke to a contractor this week, so that former tenant is reaching out to schedule that demolition. Wrapped up everything code-wise at our last board meeting here. Shared info out on Facebook for 3 or 4 weeks in a row. All the forms up front are updated, so we are fully switched over now, so I appreciate that. Thank you. Under the comprehensive plan, beginning this week or next week, the RPC will begin like a drive-through process of town. If they do determine that they need to do some walkthroughs, and this would just be property assessments, well, not assessments in the term you may be thinking, but just assessing the use of the property. That may happen in the weeks following, depending on the weather, but they're really in a data collection mode here for a couple months. We've also shared some information out on Facebook on that process, also just to educate people. And if they do get out of their cars and start walking neighborhoods, we'll share that out also. Planning and zoning, we had a meeting last week, and we'll bring some things to you this evening here shortly. We had to reschedule a rezoning from a weather-canceled meeting in early February, and then of course we had our March meeting where we had a couple of special use permits on the agenda. That's really all I have, unless you have questions.
Thank you. David. Where's Chief? I didn't see you over there. Hi. Hey, Pete. He's over there.
Kind of snuck in back door. Should have my report in front of you. I don't have a whole lot tonight. The biggest things to announce is we do have 2 guys that have moved to St. Genevieve for other reasons and are going to be joining our ranks this week. We did have a 3rd company come in and give us a estimate or whatever you want to call it for our roof, and in looking at the 3 of them, there's things we like off all of them, so my staff and I are combining, trying to write up a spec on what we want to have accomplished. Then we'll go out for bids on the repair on that as soon as that's ready. Chief Bennett and myself just came from a radio survey meeting. The St. Francis County 911 has hired somebody to do a survey, see where improvements can be made, and they gave their initial findings tonight. The end reports and everything won't be done until about May, but they're telling us what they're finding out so far, and they're going to start making their recommendations on where we can improve there. Any questions?
Sir. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Takes us to committee reports. Nothing from planning and zoning, Joe? Nope.
Just a couple notes on the parks, movie in the parks situation. Last year we had a couple rainout events that you might remember, and so Frozen was like one of the big popular movies that unfortunately we weren't able to squeeze in, but we still have the library still has the licensing for it, so we're trying to get it in before that's over. So we've got it scheduled for March 19th, but it's still going to be a little cold, so we're actually taking it indoors and working with Ciro's, or the Oris. I'm going to show it inside the Oris Theater there. That'll be March 19th at 3 p.m. Doors open about 2:30. And then we're working with the library for this next season to figure out the details, so that's about it.
Okay. Very good. Is there any public comments? If there's no public comments, we'll consent agenda. All in favor? Aye. Very good. We have 3 public hearings tonight. First one will start at 6:39. Put my reading glasses on. The mayor and the board of aldermen of the city of St. Genevieve, Missouri will hold a public hearing to consider a request from Charles and Jeanne Boyer to rezone 50 Jefferson Street from a I-1 light industrial to a C2 central business district to allow residential use.
So we received an application from Mr. and Mrs. Boyer on January 20th and fee received on the 27th. Mailed out notices on the 27th. Of course, that means it was canceled due to weather, so re-mailed out notices. And then the planning and zoning meeting was held on February 7th, and the recommendation was to approve the rezoning 602. Notice was put in the paper on the week of February 16th, and meeting here tonight to consider it.
Any questions? No questions? Close that public hearing at 6:40. And we'll open another one at 6:40. So the next one is the mayor and the board, the city of St. Genevieve will hold a public hearing to consider requests from Robert and Elizabeth Pershall that will allow a special use permit for guest lodging at 555 Cedar Lane in an R1 single-family residential district.
Mr. and Mrs. Pershall applied on January 31st, received the chief's, fire and police chief's review on February 10th, notice mailed on February 15th to all adjoining property owners and applicant, media notice sent on February 24th. Meeting was held by P&Z on the 3rd. That was an approval to recommend approval to the board, a vote of 503. Notice was in the paper on February 23rd, and then our meeting here tonight.
David, you did not hear from any neighbors, is that correct?
I heard from one neighbor who had a question about, there was one neighbor a piece, I believe parking, and I answered the question, and she was absolutely fine with it happening, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? 6:42, we'll end that hearing. We'll open another one up at 6:42. The mayor and the board of aldermen in the city of St. Genevieve, Missouri will hold a public hearing to consider requests from Chad and Sara Kreitler that will allow a special use permit for guest lodging at 1090 Market Street in an R1 single-family residential district.
Much similar to the first one, Mr. and Mrs. Kreitler applied on the 27th, received the chief, fire, and PD review on February 10th, notice mailed to adjoining property owners and applicant on the 15th, notice sent to the media on the 24th. P&Z held their meeting on the 3rd and recommended approval by a vote of 503. There was, again, one neighbor who called, had a question. Question was answered. I believe it was parking also. Actually, it was about where it would be located. And both of these are walkout basement units where the residents are also living there. But the neighbor was in absolutely fine with it. Notice was put in the paper the week of February 23rd for our meeting to be held here this evening.
Which building is that? 1090 Market?
1090 is the one right there at the corner of Coin and Market.
Oh, right on the corner, facing Market Street.
Correct.
Right, okay.
Any other questions? Good. 6:43, we'll close the public hearings.
Thank you.
There's no old business. That takes us to new business. The first item is approval of a low bid of Schulte Supply Incorporated in the amount of $23,036 for 6 and 8-inch PVC pipe needed for the 2022 water main replacement project.
Motion to approve. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Takes us to the first reading of Bill Number 4478, an ordinance of the City of St. Genevieve authorizing the mayor to enter into agreement with Bourbon Contracting Company for the 2022 street repaving program in the amount of $190,705.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Takes us to Bill Number 4479, an ordinance of the City of St. Genevieve authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with CE Contracting for the Parkwood Concrete Replacement Project in the amount of $143,054.40.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Takes us to Bill Number 4480, an ordinance approving a zoning change from a I-1 Light Industrial to a C2 Central Business for 50 Jefferson Street.
Motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Takes us to Bill Number 4481, an ordinance approving a special use permit for Robert and Elizabeth Purcell that will allow guest lodging at 555 Cedar Lane.
Mayor, just want to add to my report, the Purcells and the Kreitlers did request 2 readings. Obviously, it's up to you, but they did request 2 readings if that's possible.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve that.
Motion to have a second reading on 4480 and 4481.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
So this will be, wait a minute.
Gotta get the first one.
We were on 4481.
We're on 4481.
Yes, and there was only a motion, there wasn't a second yet, was there?
Right.
Okay, so there's a motion to approve 4481 without a second.
I'll second.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye. And that was the Purcells and the Kreitlers, right? Not the Boyers?
81, 82.
Okay, so I'll make a motion for a second reading of 4481.
Second.
All in favor of that?
Aye.
So, the second reading, this will be the second reading of Bill Number 4481, an ordinance approving a special use permit for Robert and Elizabeth Purcell that will allow guest lodging at 555 Cedar Lane.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Have a roll call, please.
Alderwoman Johnson.
Yes.
Alderman Donovan.
Yes.
Alderman Jokers.
Yes.
Alderman Inman.
Yes.
Alderman Rainey.
Yes.
Alderman Prince.
Yes.
Alderwoman Armbruster.
Yes.
7 yes, 0 no's, 1 absent. Bill number 4481 now becomes ordinance 4399.
Thank you. So this takes us to the first reading of Bill Number 4482, an ordinance approving a special use permit for Chad and Sara Kreitler that will allow guest lodging at 1090 Market Street.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Motion for a second reading?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Second reading of Bill Number 4482, an ordinance approving a special use permit for Chad and Sara Kreitler that will allow guest lodging at 1090 Market Street.
Second.
Have a roll call, please.
Alderwoman Armbruster. Yes. Alderman Prince.
Yes.
Alderman Rainey.
Yes.
Alderman Inman.
Yes.
Alderman Jokers.
Yes.
Alderman Donovan.
Yes.
Alderwoman Johnson.
Yes.
7 yes, 0 no's, 1 absent. Bill number 4482 now becomes ordinance 4400.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Yes.
can we get a second reading on the low bid from Schulte as well due to the timing of that?
You don't need a second reading on that.
Don't need.
Just needed approval.
Just need approval on
We're going to order it.
Is that correct? All right.
Good. Okay, thank you. All right, takes us to the first reading of Bill Number 4483, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into agreement between the City of St. Genevieve and St. Genevieve County to assist in the funding and cooperation of the St. Genevieve County Recycling Center.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Takes us to Bill Number 4484, an ordinance approving a cooperative bid proposal from Sentinel Emergency Solutions through Sourcewell Cooperative Purchasing for 4 sets of turnout gear in the amount not to exceed $11,894.68.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion for a second reading, please.
Second. All in favor of that?
Aye.
Takes us to the second reading of Bill Number 4484, an ordinance approving a cooperative bid proposal from Sentinel Emergency Solutions through Sourcewell Cooperative Purchasing for 4 sets of turnout gear in the amount not to exceed $11,894.68.
Motion to approve. Second.
Have a roll call, please.
Alderman Jokers?
Yes.
Alderman Donovan?
Yes.
Alderwoman Johnson?
Yes.
Alderwoman Armbruster? Yes. Alderman Prince?
Yes.
Alderman Rainey?
Yes.
Alderman Eidman?
Yes.
7 yes, 0 no's, 1 absent. Bill number 4484 now becomes ordinance 4401.
Thank you. Is there any other business? If there's no other business, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much.